Tribalism has consumed our nation, undermining justice. Juba, deep concerns are mounting over what many describe as the growing weaponization of South Sudan's judiciary along tribal lines. Leaked information suggests that the prosecutorial process in the case against opposition leader Dr. Riek Machar is being heavily influenced by powerful individuals close to the presidency. According to sources, the appointed prosecutor Sarah Peter Nyat Koch, the wife of businessman Bol Mel and cousin to Minister Honorable Joseph Gunga Kek, was selected under questionable circumstances. Bol Mel, known to be a key figure opposing Dr. Riek, is alleged to wield enormous influence over the judiciary and the presidency. The Chief Justice, himself a Dinka from Warrap State, the president's home region, was appointed under Bol Mel's influence. The Minister of Justice, also from a Wheel and a close ally of Bol Mel, is reportedly positioned to advance what critics call tribal justice. A leaked document alleges that Minister Joseph Gunga Kek is set to receive $30 million through a Dubai bank transfer in exchange for ensuring charges against Dr. Riek proceed. These revelations have fueled widespread belief that the outcome of the trial has already been predetermined, undermining the credibility of the judicial process. Bol Mel is the judge, prosecutor, and implementing authority, while the president is the ultimate appointing power with vested interests in weakening Dr. Riek Machar, one political analyst told reporters. This has intensified public frustration that South Sudan's courts are no longer impartial institutions, but instruments of political and tribal dominance. Many argue that what is unfolding is not justice, but a clique of Dinka leaders in power prosecuting newer leaders for political survival. Despite this grim picture, observers note that the wider Dinka population does not share animosity toward Dr. Riek Machar or the newer community. Instead, blame is increasingly directed toward a handful of individuals consolidating power through tribalism and patronage. The growing perception is stark. Justice in South Sudan has been consumed by tribalism, and the nation itself is slipping further from the rule of law. Headline: SPLMIO accuses government of weaponizing courts after suspension and arrests of Riek Machar. Subhead: Opposition calls charges against Machar and senior officials manufactured. Critics warn moves could derail the revitalized peace agreement and deepen instability. Juba date: South Sudan's main armed opposition, the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in Opposition, SPLMIO, on Monday accused the government of fabricating criminal charges against its leader, First Vice President Riek Machar, and senior members, an escalation that analysts warn could undermine the already fragile revitalized agreement on the resolution of conflict in South Sudan, RERC says. The dispute follows a presidential order broadcast on state radio, suspending Machar from office, and a press conference in Juba, where Justice Minister Joseph Gung announced that Machar and 7 senior SPLMIO figures would face charges including murder, treason, terrorism, destruction of property, and crimes against humanity. Riek Machar, SPLMIO Deputy Chair of the National Committee for Foreign Relations, called the charges manufactured by the SPLMIG in a deliberate attempt to abrogate the revitalized peace agreement, sideline Dr. Riek Machar and the SPLMIO, and consolidate total authoritarian control and one-tribe rule in the country. Machar said the group has seen a pattern of violations, from unilateral removals of SPLMIO officials to attacks on cantonment areas, that point to political motives behind the prosecutions. He also criticized recent judicial reshuffles and the appointment of Sarah Peter Nyat, wife of Vice President Benjamin Bol Mel, as Counsel General in the Ministry of Justice, describing these changes as evidence of nepotism and efforts to shape outcomes in politically sensitive cases. The SPLMIO further asserted that the only forum authorized under the Peace Pact to investigate violations by peace principles is the AU-backed hybrid court envisaged in Chapter 5 of the RERC says. It said any other prosecutions amount to illegal political witch hunts. Government spokespeople have defended the steps as lawful. At the press conference, Justice Minister Joseph Gung said the accused are entitled to a fair trial, but did not provide details of the evidence underpinning the charges. The government has not yet responded to SPLMIO's public calls for regional mediators, including Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, to intervene. The arrests and suspension come amid rising tensions since March, when clashes between the South Sudan People's Defense Forces, SSPDF, and the White Army in Upper Nile's Nasir County produced large numbers of casualties, captured soldiers, and the assassination of a brigade commander. The government's attempt to disarm local civilians sparked that bout of violence, which preceded further arrests of Machar allies in Juba, including Petroleum Minister Pute Khan Cole and Machar's Chief of Staff, General Gabriel Duplam. Human rights and political analysts warn the confrontation risks derailing an already faltering transition. The country's next national elections were postponed to 2026 amid unresolved disputes over security arrangements, constitutional reforms, and power sharing. He quotes, "These charges are manufactured to abrogate the revitalized peace agreement." Riek Machar, SPLMIO. The minister claims the accused are entitled to a fair trial, yet simultaneously declares the matter sub judice. These contradictions reveal the lack of impartiality. SPLMIO's statement. Why it matters. 1. The charges target a principal signatory of the peace deal, raising the risk of renewed large-scale violence. 2. If the judiciary is perceived as politicized, domestic and international, confidence in South Sudan's transitional institutions will erode. 3. The dispute increases pressure on regional guarantors and mediators to step in, with implications for regional stability. Newsroom verification checklist for reporters/NGOs. Request and obtain the presidential suspension order and the Justice Ministry's formal indictments. Ask the Ministry of Justice to provide the legal basis and evidence for each charge. Request redacted copies if necessary. Seek comment from Riek Machar/SPLMIO leadership, Justice Minister Joseph Gong, Office of the President, Counsel General Sarah Peter Nyett, the dismissed Chief Justice's office. Verify detention status and locations of all arrested officials. Request access for independent monitors if possible. Confirm whether the hybrid court provisions in the RARC have been activated or bypassed. Consult the agreement's text and AU guarantors. Contact international guarantors, IGAD, AU, UNMISS, Troika, for statements and any planned mediation. Track security incidents and Nasir clashes, using independent field sources and hospital/morgue logs where available. Press statement for immediate release. Juba's political witch hunt, a joke of the decade. September 12, 2025. The recent accusations and fabricated charges against the first vice president, Dr. Riek Machar Tenny Durgan, and other senior officials of the SPLM/SPLA-IO represent nothing more than a crude political witch hunt by President Salva Kiir and his cohorts. These baseless charges are a deliberate attempt to dismantle the 2018 revitalized peace agreement and plunge the country into renewed instability. First, the so-called Nasir crisis was artificially created by the SPLMIG to serve as a pretext for these false allegations. It is a calculated scheme to shift blame onto the main opposition party while shielding those truly responsible for undermining peace. Secondly, South Sudan has no independent judiciary. What exists in Juba are politically manipulated courts, kangaroo courts that operate under the directives of the presidency. In any genuine court of law, such rubbish charges would be dismissed without hesitation. Thirdly, these reckless actions by the SPLMIG set a dangerous precedent that will inevitably backfire. History has shown that oppression and manipulation always fail in the end. The government may believe it is tightening its grip, but it is only digging its own political grave. Finally, the world must now watch closely. The so-called peace guarantors have a responsibility to speak out against this blatant violation of the peace agreement. If they remain silent, they will be complicit in driving the final nail into the coffin of peace in South Sudan. We in the SPLM/SPLA-IO remain steadfast. No amount of fabricated charges or intimidation will shake our commitment to justice, democracy, and peace. In the end, Dr. Riek Machar and the people's struggle will emerge victorious over these desperate and destructive tactics. Issued by James Gatdet-Dak, Press Secretary, Office of the First Vice President, SPLM/SPLA-IO. South Sudan's orchestrated trial of Dr. Riek Machar, a political witch hunt disguised as justice. By Dup Chuk Wool. On September 11, 2025, the South Sudanese government announced that first vice president and SPLM/AIO leader, Dr. Riek Machar, would stand trial on charges of murder, treason, crimes against humanity, and financing terrorism. Lieutenant Gabriel Dupe, Lam, and Oil Minister Pute Kong Cole were indicted alongside him. Just hours later, President Salva Kiir suspended Machar and Pute from office, underscoring the regime's intent to weaponize the law as an instrument of political suppression. Although framed as a step toward accountability, these charges are widely seen as politically motivated, aimed not at delivering justice, but at weakening the opposition and cementing Kiir's hold on power. A decade-long strategy of elimination. The prosecution of Machar did not emerge from a vacuum. Since March 2013, Kiir and the Jing Council of Elders, JC, an unelected, ethnically exclusive body, have sought to sideline Machar. The JC functions as an extension of Kiir's rule, buttressing his resistance to the full implementation of the 2018 peace agreement, which called for shared governance and security reforms. Instead, Kiir has consistently pursued near-total authority, replicating the very conditions that ignited the 2013 civil war. History offers a revealing precedent. In July 2016, Kiir struck a deal with Taban Dengai to replace Machar, triggering the bloody J1 fighting in Juba and setting off another phase of civil war. Today, the government is repeating this tactic. On April 9, 2025, Stephen Parkwall declared himself the legitimate SPLM/AIO leader, a move widely dismissed by the mainstream opposition as government-backed sabotage. Acting SPLM/AIO leader Nathaniel Oyet Perry rightly warned that this mirrors the 2016 imposition of Taban Deng, which crippled the peace process. The Nasir clashes, manufactured pretext. The government's case hinges on allegations that Machar incited violence in Nasir County and directed the White Army to attack government forces. But reality tells a different story. The March 2025 clashes in Nasir erupted from long-standing grievances against government troops stationed there for over a decade. This battalion was notorious for systemic abuses, widespread sexual violence, destruction of livelihoods like fishing, and constant harassment of civilians. When the local population demanded their replacement, government forces escalated tensions with tribal militias, including the Agwelek, Shilluk, and Abushak, Nokdinka, and even called in Ugandan airstrikes.
Malam di liang kadel, chala da tada long katadun kel kane. Want to din nika nonia ka want to tot terka mejakonaling. Malaro de rewe ka sa Sudan atama. Katan to ko Chakun Dr. Riek Machar chai sai da ko bai nang walok. Kenoi cha bom den, ke long den menchal gete pas by president cha ja wui ke ja. Cha long mo cha kapin ke ja ka chang yapan. Anamo amalaro dan tamarewe ka sa Sudan. I jan karoda mani Minister of Oil, Petroleum, and Port Control. And child mono child bonganamo, Taja Wikeja, Minchal Keja Minister of Petroleum, Lord Tabranquam, which I Wikeja Kokano Winowan, Charajamulatpan, Akaramuladia, Aramulakwan ke Luke, indeed, Menjaquan Kasko Sudan. And Luke a monomuki and Loda, then I got Niman a bull male, I didn't know, no, a jacko Beladon Babelat. Let Kanamogatet ko baga Niman bull male ba non ko be. Gada baka baka lok ngay kona ne te grami cha wi ko loganam te laro no chano goro no banete abaga ko der makan kanalat a raymone jaje no kan talo der mi kanalat ko kan kalat akaten chagur ke investigation ne chalat a che la no ne te talo der mi chaje ka katala rain mi ka rai do mi chaje ko kyu ko korean ko chigalan mi ko no mo kanalat katalo am shi rai ke ja ko ba benigning kanasar. Nete wo kanasar akan dene ning so Sudan tinchal SSPD up akan ete dian raiwe kasos ke kamalakal chuko ka kanasar hulang awana ka burabye. Diana kan ku kanal lonak bukan kare nel kanakan kakamay kaping. Anamo eden kume median ko wahala wakanak chika ale me kuma to ko biga kuma kulo nak ne de chiliuten a liukan ko neti gankanaro den ko ich neti naka chiga banka ka andiran de kulu kwet kuma antama ajan chika na kula la twinen telemishi kan larana biajanga jenu alada mo amala jang katet ano bawun misale Joseph mela kwenwone bajeno mela ganiman bol mel ko belat am belat telem budal ke jay chay jo kono leni kan rambi dollar ka kido jalada mo chay chula tega me gurke ajen ku ko lene no chalwang kwaro kon chay wit painiken chido no ba kanang nyam lo kan tama Arroy Michel ke rayamo charon mudit che no no amane jang do konten lokamalat ke kwana salpa ke meya diskan chenya ne bol mel a chiga bai karaj Michel ke rajamo we kizano chi tok aneti chajek ke modo no telekader misikanalat duno anta me chader mekan kanalat chaja ko bai la dwiden ke kwiko tukwar ke salpa ke meya dit namo ajana togantama kayene dial be jang ajano tamal ladla mona e bol mel e janda le dial tonia ko bewun misale Joseph mela kwermone ka so Sudan be aka ramata koranta me Joseph e jen cheb de poinde an bol mel de la ramara mala dibiti e wuda misale Joseph mela kwermone midit ka so Sudan drona lat we hetet ko ba nuher ba ka dwich katalam kan lar namane e jana to antam reira be Juba am la roda am to right to rananga Ganga jeno an kuma sa Sudan chergo malanar ke enuwan o e kuma mi na kuma jani she kuma nore ne dang diop to guyen gan yanton ke jang karodin ka beji chang kandia bon me te cha nyal te cha nya sel pakir garame te cha garniman a bol mel karamarode an kwalmunu mudit te cha che bol mel poinde which is talamudin and latumu la rejichen ay chikan dundian dol ne wa chikan adulten aka chidono bikalan yelat aka weekend ano tarambe ka bel kala dien kalan misherke namo ko konin tichewe chaila bono si kwan Donald Trump kwara Amerika cheran de chejak ko baban ke Ethiopia babarai ka kwar igat ken Africa Union aka kwiko de kwan Dr. Machar yelling ram mo jakani de la private ke around the mite jaga legend ko baladam balat keno bejoda man chalat beno beblane tonne ka kor kami kan ladam kana lat an gwejeno take action mida kan ka kor kami karai dementa no kanaling e ken kwaraton te la kwara Africa Union ken akwari gat amana dual Africa to ko ken te ka muktab wana Jaga lara jamoni no kwanu Dr. Machar ko talami sedir jaloenke ko go male satu karon kine dang rawiro wal badak abakulo lat Jara no che jak kantama talami sarang ke takamen lada ko jam bani janalar no oni jaw misala da kwar ako kor kami se jaw misalat nutala kin misalo kan eken kwar totin takamuktab Africa Union kene gat Gujeno Bikwarni Donald Trump beteka action nu bakan legend ajan chikona shwana nantamo kwana Dr. Machar kana neka dial shiba stop doblam ke honorable podcast amanne to kokien tin chara yanaka manamam James neto awaka neti libantama ko bakanang nyamdok ko bakoluk ko korko misago luko chawa kwet adeke shuyen Raja Monta Major Raja Titan Riek aka Juba kay jana la roda pan aray nindang diop to contenene ano ediana chetom yan aka kuja moch la te da lon kay lian ko dial katadun kane katandun kel kane wam ko lena lunja mi siang mi jeram pepan gore jano di channel mo DJ subscribe ko dejin ram kel ko bonama la ne dial te kay bun na manowan ala ne yeta lodge katadun kel kan ni siang kan ola ina lunja ko bialare tin kam ne kaya am biakaling lab sentine ga kambie katije to wala tok talamula kaitan ka ki de jamun bor ki de jendel kel ke un shale gu kun din ma kwai tut akan mut karai do tien aka joja no tan ram si ga kap chong la dia ni sikana to banu bukan lat ke gong nu ma kwai ke gweja no katan tar kan no kap chong anwar de ne jo no kwamat kel lat ne ken rai dun la ken atalam wi etiam le ngaro ja chalat kwarne kwar mo no mindit ni jo sob geng men mo go luka ja ke lotan lat ja no cha ne ti cha kwe der ke cha ba je der ni sikana lat le gweja bi der den bukona lar ju bukon mi chogak.
This is a legal matter. Any accused person may not hold any public position, but this will be determined at a later date. A special court, according to our laws, was established. In terms of the dates, this is entirely a matter of the judicial. As you understand, the government is comprised of 3 independent, mutually independent branches. As a prosecutor, our role is to investigate and charge the accused as we have done. It is the role of the court to serve summons on the accused persons. So that shall be the work of the judiciary going forward. So based on evidence, the following charges were prepared under South Sudan laws and applicable international laws. 1, murder. This is in accordance with Section 206, Penal Code Act 2008, in particular the killing of Major General David Majur, 250 SSPDF soldiers and the UN personnel. The other charge is conspiracy and common intention. This is in relation to Section 67 to 69 of the Penal Code Act, coordination with the White Army. The other charge relates to terrorism and terrorism financing, and this is under Section 44 of Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorism Financing Act. The other charge relates to treason and acts against state authority. This is in accordance with Section 64 Penal Code Act 2008, undermining the sovereignty and security of the state. The other charge relates to destruction of public property and military assets under Section 334 of the Penal Code Act 2008.
Arajalat kwarne kwangwan medit kasa Sudan ni Joseph Gen taja garan long netam wan tin chigwar ka kagmot rewe kasa Sudan man rewe into koken ora chalat chera in metok kwejan kan article to kon ta gor kan kalat ka wetken ka chanya balar bono article chalel kasa Sudan che jalat kanamo kachi official article kachi official constitution medena lat ke ke dena kwad kweder ke Rajamo arain misagat neto wana long ano rajisala do shirain michuang keno neti ke jitok duel lat kanem dungcheng dian a she dong kuma aka kijama shila ta dalon ko shi aliyap kalkane biatamana